the risk that the Browns had to take with I love you, Cleveland, and I love you, Ohio. And a very pleasant welcome to this week's version of Bonus Time with Drennan here on the Big Play Sports Network. Hi, I'm Bruce Drennan, along with Ryan Smith, my producer. It's great to have you aboard this week's version. We got a lot to cover. The Olympics are underway. The trade deadline has come and gone. Guardians just keep on winning. And indeed, we have Browns camp opening, of course, in Greenbrier. Lots to talk about, including Mark Lawrence, editor-publisher of the Playbook. Of course, those of you who have followed me throughout these years know that Mark and I go way, way back. He is one of the top handicappers in the country. He's the editor-publisher of the Playbook, PlaybookSports.com. I feature him on a regular basis weekly here on my show now that I'm on the Big Play Sports Network, and will do so again this season, handicapping the top college games as well as the pros and, of course, the Browns. So we're going to have Mark on in the second segment, and we're going to preview the college football season. He has already got his new publication out, the Playbook Sports Playbook, and it is out and about, and you can certainly have access to it. I strongly advise you to do so. It is a great reference point. And indeed, we have a lot to cover here. Ryan, how you doing this week? Good to see you.
Good to see you too, Bruce. I'm doing well. I'm excited for football. I'm excited for Mark. Football is like the only thing that I actually profit on when I bet. So I'm very excited for that to be back.
You don't profit by betting on the Trotters?
Nope. I'm a horrible gambler. Only thing I can bet on is football.
The reason I say that is because tonight we are all going to gather at the MGM Northfield Park for a big play extravaganza. All of the on-air talent and the front office will be there to have a little party get-together, and we'll be gambling. We've all been given an allotment of money to small potatoes, but what is the prize, by the way? I see that Ken Miles, our major investor here at the network, said that after 5 or 6 races, whoever has won the most money will win the prize or be proclaimed the top handicapper.
Yeah, I don't know if it's just.
Did you hear? Is that been leaked yet?
I don't know if it's just that you get the title, like it's a pride thing. You get the title of the best handicapper at Big Play, or I'm not sure if there's an actual prize or not. But I'm interested to see. It'll be fun. It'll be a good time.
Heck with the title. What do you think this is? The Olympics and it's a gold medal or something? You know, you can keep that. At least give me a sleeve of balls or something. But the Trotter, the thoroughbreds are tough enough to pick, let alone the Trotters. I love the way these drivers, they're going like this and they pull them back. They're going like this and they pull them back. They're going like this and they pull them back. You know what I mean? Well, the Guardians were active. Antonetti and Chernoff. I salute you. Good job. We'll get to that in a minute. But the winning ways just keep coming for our Guardians. As yesterday, they wrapped up the series with Detroit, win the season series against the Tigers as a 5-0 shutout victory to conclude that road trip, and now it's back home for a series. And there's a very difficult portion of the schedule coming up, which I'll get into in a minute. But Josh Naylor broke open the scoreless game in the 4th inning with a home run, his 23rd of the season. He now has 74 RBIs. You know, I thought when we got him, Ryan, he was going to develop into a real good ball player, and here he is producing now.
Yeah, he struggled for a little bit. He sat a couple games. Maybe it was a nice mental reset. It was nice to see him.
Yes.
That one game against the Tigers, he got it through the infield, and that was ultimately the game-winning run. As you mentioned, went yard the other night. That's good to see. And Jose is coming again to be an absolute superstar. The Jose we know and love. That's really good. And then you get to the pitching, right? Tanner Bybee has been looking amazing all season. That continued, dominated the Tigers. And then Gavin Williams yesterday, a phenomenal outing. That was huge for his confidence, huge for our rotation. It was very nice to see. And, you get a little day off here before you got a big series coming up against the Orioles. Guardians are in a real good spot, Bruce.
27th home run for Jose came in the 8th inning. He's now got 87 RBIs, and he's hitting at a 275 clip. Those are MVP-type numbers. If he keeps it up, I don't see him getting it. It's going to be Judge or Soto, probably Judge.
Yeah.
The influence of the Eastern Seaboard writers who vote. But certainly you can make a case for Jose. No question about it. Plus, he plays great defense. Rocchio hit his 4th home run of the season, came in the 9th inning to cap things off. And as Ryan said, Gavin Williams. Oh, by the way, Lane Thomas broke in with the Guardians yesterday after the acquisition, got his first base hit as a Guardian. And Gavin Williams, 5 innings of shutout ball, 2 hits, 1 walk, 8 strikeouts. He looks good. What a welcome addition he is now that he's healthy and back in that rotation.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, game 1 going in the playoffs right now, it's definitely going to be Bybee. But then you got right there Gavin Williams and Ben Lively, who's been playing really well. That's a solid 3 to go out. And then you're going to see what you have in Matthew Boyd. You're going to see what you have in Alex Wood. If one of those people can step up, then you got 4 starters right there that you can go 6 innings comfortably with in a playoff series. Guardians have a real shot, Bruce.
Yeah, Heron, Sandlin, Smith, and Clase, 4 innings of shutout ball, only allowing 2 hits. Again, this bullpen proving they are the best in all of baseball. Well, we're going to see going down the stretch because the Guardians have a brutal conclusion to this 2023 schedule. No question about it. Or 2024, I should say. Baltimore is next up. Then Arizona, then at Minnesota, the Chicago Cubs still in contention for a wild card, at Milwaukee, the front runners in the National League Central, at New York against the Yankees, Texas, the defending world champions, Kansas City, still breathing, certainly still breathing, very much so, Pittsburgh still breathing for a wild card in the National League. That's quite a story, by the way, with those young pitchers. At Kansas City, at LA against the Dodgers. Then the only weak link in the conclusion of the schedule are the Chicago White Sox, who have been brutally tough on us this year. Don't ask me to explain. Then Tampa Bay, Minnesota, at St. Louis, Cardinals still very much alive, Cincinnati, and then the Houston Astros, who, of course, now have overtaken Seattle for the lead in the American League West. So there you have that. The schedule could not be could not be any tougher, Ryan.
Yeah, but I don't necessarily think that's a horrible thing. You know, it would be different, you know, if we were still neck and neck with the Twins and there still is a risk of not winning the AL Central. I understand that. There's still plenty of ball left this season, but I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. You're facing a plethora of teams that are gonna be postseason contenders that you're likely gonna run into in order to get to the World Series. And I mean, that's what the trade deadline was for, right? You have a phenomenal first half of the season, figure out what your holes are, go address them, and then, you know, buckle up and get ready for the second ride of the season.
It's almost like you're playing playoff ball from here on out.
It essentially seems like it, yeah.
Because it seems like just about all these teams, well, Baltimore's in for sure. Arizona looks good right now, although they just lost Walker. They're supposed to get Rodriguez back any minute. Minnesota, of course, in our division, right behind us, but we've got some breathing room. However, they're looking good for a wild card. Cubs are breathing, as I said. Milwaukee's the front runner over there in the National League Central. Yankees are in for sure. Texas is on the bubble. We'll see, but they are the defending world champs. They got Young back this week, I see. Kansas City, I mentioned. Pittsburgh, still breathing. Kansas City again. The Dodgers have been coasting the whole season in that National League West. Tampa Bay, who's always tough. And then Minnesota, St. Louis, Cincinnati, and Houston. So it really is a brutal schedule to conclude. Now, getting to the deadline as we did yesterday, late afternoon, I can't do anything but to applaud Antonetti and Chernoff. First off, they got Matthew Boyd a few weeks ago, and the former Detroit pitcher has been rehabbing, and pretty successfully from what we hear. So it could be any day that he's activated and we see him starting a game for the Guardians. Proven left-hander, 33 years old now, been around the block many times as a starting pitcher for the Tigers, and now he is a member of our team. And this was a no-lose situation, as we touched upon in the past. Excuse me. The fact that he was signed to a minor league contract means that if he doesn't work out, you don't lose anything. By major league standards, that's peanut money. And the Guardians / Indians have been successful with guys like this. I give you Kazmir from the past. And they've had others too, where it's low risk, high reward. And so I like the Boyd signing very much. Lane Thomas, they address getting another bat. And I think he fits in just splendidly, Ryan. He's an outfielder who has versatility. Last year, he hit .268 with 28 home runs, 86 RBIs, and 20 stolen bases. This year, coming into yesterday's debut with the Guardians, .253 batting average, 8 home runs, 40 RBIs, and 28 stolen bases. So here's a guy that brings you versatility defensively, and also is the kind of bat that this team, really, the makeup of this team is all about.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, he's a younger guy. He mashes lefties, which is a really good sign. He can be an everyday right fielder, which is nice. And you mentioned he's got the speed. He's really a perfect fit for the Guardians, right? You slot him right behind Quan. You got 2 guys that get on base, 2 guys that can advance. Right now, he leads the league active. I think it's now after last night, 26-game on-base streak. He's consistent. Strikes out a little bit, but I mean, that's okay. You know, you got Quan to get on. If you can get a true bat that can play right field every day to add to Quan, Naylor, Ramirez, you're in real good shape. I think it was a great pickup. I don't think we gave up too much considered. I thought it was a great move.
Yeah, I played golf a couple of weeks ago with a retired judge downstate. We were at Denison College, the course that the university plays, and then the next day we were at the golf club of Dublin. And the judge said, they've got to sell, give away the farm. This is it. The avenue's here, the window's here, and everything. I said, we're the youngest team in the major league. Slow down. I don't want to give away the farm. But I certainly believe that Antonetti and Chernoff will do their due diligence to try to add, and they did, getting a bat. And then right before the deadline, they announced the acquisition of Alex Cobb.
Yeah.
Now, Cobb is a very nice addition. He's an innings. It hasn't pitched in a while because he's coming off surgery. He's 36 years old. In 2023, he was 7-7 with a 3.87 ERA and an 151 and a third innings of work. He struck out 131. He's a veteran. He knows how to pitch. He's coming off left hip surgery. And the other thing to keep in mind here is that our bench coach, Craig Albernaz, was with Cobb in San Francisco as the bullpen coach from 20 to 23. So there's a marriage there. There's a background there. There's history there. I think that had a lot to do with the acquisition of Cobb, and we gave away some lower tier minor leaguers. I also find it interesting that way back in 2013, he was with the Tampa Bay Rays, and he pitched against the Indians in the playoffs. That was Francona's first year when Madden was the manager of Tampa Bay. Do you remember that, Ryan?
I was at that game.
11-3 that year with a 2.76 ERA. Really was at the top of his game.
I believe that was a wild card game, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we had Danny Salazar pitching. I was there.
Yes, I remember they had me do, I was on the network, and they had me do a remote. That was when we were Sports Time Ohio before Fox bought us, and they had me do a remote before that game from Progressive Field. And, he was tough on us, too. So, again, an innings eater. So now what you've got is Bybee, as Ryan said, followed by Gavin Williams, who seems like he's coming into his own again and showing us that promise that he displayed a year ago. And then you have Lively, you've got Cobb, and you've got Boyd, let alone this tremendous bullpen. So I like the looks of what the team now is made up of as we enter the last stretch of the season and going into the playoffs.
Yeah, Bruce, I really thought they made some nice additions there in the trade deadline. I mean, the old phrase, beggars can't be choosers. We weren't expecting a giant move, a Garrett Crochet type move, even though he didn't get moved, which is just beyond me. But yeah, I mean, you have Matthew Boyd, Alex Cobb now, 2 guys that you don't really know what to expect, but they're both very capable capable pitchers. And if you can just get one of them, both of them would be nice, but just one of them, to come up here and play at like a Ben Lively level, then the Guardians truly have a nice 4-spot rotation. And then the fifth one, like I said, if one of them doesn't work out, I mean, listen, no team in Major League Baseball has 5 amazing starting pitchers. It's not how it goes right now. So
and here's another. That's a great point. And how many teams? There's very few exceptions to what I'm about to say. Very, 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 very few. How many teams finished the season with the same 5-man rotation as they started the season when they came up north, whether you're training in Florida or the desert, with the same 5? Very, 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 very rare for that to happen. Of course, in our case, we had Logan Allen and McKenzie in that starting rotation, so we're a different starting rotation. But the bottom line with us is get that game into the 5th, 6th inning with this bullpen.
And then it should be wraps from there.
This bullpen.
Put a bow on it.
I mean to tell you, heaven forbid, I don't want to jinx them come postseason, but they have been the best in baseball.
Yeah, not even close, frankly.
No question. It's amazing. Let alone, when in doubt, you give the ball to Class A. And there's another case. Can you make a case for Class A to win the Cy Young this year? Yes. I think yes. I don't hear any arguments from my partner over there.
That's funny because that's a question for later.
Okay. By the way, yesterday's win over Detroit, that 5-0 victory, means that the Guardians are now 65-32. And you know what that means?
I think that means they have the best record in baseball.
We are tied with Philadelphia at 62-32 for the best record in the major leagues. And that's important now, since they changed the rule a few years ago, that the team with the best record gets home field advantage in the postseason in their respective league playoff series. So right now, we're the bosses here in the American League. We will be getting home field advantage in the American League playoffs. 2 months to go. 2 months to go. But right now, we've got the best record. And if we get into the World Series and we're against Philadelphia, we're even up with them now. We took 2. And by the way, how about going into Philadelphia and taking 2 out of 3 from them?
Yeah, man, that was crazy. That was crazy. I mean, and when you think about it, it's even more crazy, right? Obviously, the game Carrasco started, you dropped, but then you were starting Joey Cantillo. Like, you went into Philadelphia playing the best team in baseball, and I know post-All-Star break, Philly was kind of in a similar slump to the Guardians, but it doesn't matter. They're a 60-plus win ball club. They have Bryce Harper, Trey Turner, JT Realmuto. Like, they are a star-studded team, and they've proven it this year. And you went into their home, took 2 out of 3, and left no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, it's just exciting as can be, so we shall see. But certainly this ball club is for real. Quan in the hunt for the batting crown. Obviously, we mentioned Naylor, MVP candidate Jose, everybody else contributing. One day it's Fry, another day it's Freeman, another day it's Jimenez. It's just amazing. Bo Naylor and Hedges. I mean, they're really a fun team to watch and follow, and I hope you're thoroughly enjoying it. And by the way, attendance is way up. Yeah. Way up. By the way, here's another little tidbit. The last time that the Indians had the best record and qualified for was 95, but it wasn't. This rule wasn't in effect in 95. In 95, the Indians, it was a shortened season because of the strike. The strike had carried over from, there was no World Series in 1994. But and we would have been in the playoffs and a very serious threat to get to the World Series that year, by the way. That was our first year in old Jacobs Field, now Progressive. But in 95, in a 144-game schedule, the Indians were 144.
That's crazy.
And Grover didn't win Manager of the Year. Unbelievable. He didn't even finish second. He was third.
You got to imagine Vogt has a pretty damn good chance this year. I would be shocked if he didn't.
Oh, no question about it. Because Baltimore was already there last year.
Right.
And obviously Houston and the Yankees were expected to be there. I don't think there's any doubt whatsoever that Vogt is by far the front runner for Manager of the Year here in the American League. So there's that. Go Guards. All right. I mentioned to you last week that this is the least excited, the least interested that I have ever in my life been to the Olympics. So let me give you an update now that the Olympics are underway. I wound up this last week. My wife and I went down to the Ozarks. If you've ever been to Lake of the Ozarks, you've got to go. It's one of the best hidden secrets for a summertime vacation that you can imagine. I think Door County in upper Wisconsin is another great hidden secret, but Lake of the Ozarks is just absolutely gorgeous. Well, my wife's late father's second wife, he remarried after my wife's mother died. She just turned 90, so we went down there and visited her. She lives in Lake of the Ozarks, as my father-in-law did before he passed. And so we spent about 5 days down there. Had a real nice time. And what happened? My wife went to bed, and I wound up watching the entire opening ceremonies with Marilyn. And and I thought it was spectacular. I really did. I thought it was absolute. I don't know why Peyton Manning was there or who was the other one? Kelly Clarkson? Yeah, I have no idea why they were joining Tarico. But then again, who am I to question what NBC does in their way of thinking? God help me. But anyway, I thought they were spectacular. All the countries, the athletes coming down on those open air boats down the Seine, and really spectacular. I enjoyed it thoroughly. The burning of the flag. There's controversy, of course, because of that Last Supper controversy. I don't know if it's blown out of proportion or not. But indeed, again, leave it to the French. Speaking of the French, I'll tell you how much I'm into the Olympics. La Tour Eiffel. You know what that means, Ryan?
I can't say I do.
Eiffel Tower.
No. Could have guessed that, I suppose.
How do you like that?
Yeah.
How about this one? Manger des Bouchers.
Is that Mr. something? Sir something?
What is that?
Like, what was it? What was the first word?
Manger des Bouchers.
Nope.
I took Spanish. I didn't take French.
Me too.
So excuse my mispronunciation. Any idea what that means?
No, I have no idea.
Eat the meat.
Eat the meat.
That's not a vulgar expression, by the way. It just happens to be the accurate translation. And if you ever, Ryan, this is directed at you. If you ever hear me say, fermez la bouche, you better adhere. You know what that means?
Premier de Bouche?
Fermez la bouche.
No, drink the beer, maybe? Eat the meat, drink the beer?
It means shut your mouth. So, I hope I don't have to use it, but you know I'm going to save. My wife took a little French, and that's where I got these tidbits. So I'm going to save that last one for you, Ryan.
Sounds good.
So be careful.
I will.
Have you watched any?
I watched basketball. That was about it.
Oh,
and I caught
that
some
was the one
swimming
I
in the
was
morning.
least interested in.
Caught some swimming in the morning. A little table tennis. That was cool to see. Little volleyball.
Oh, they're unbelievable.
There, it's insane.
You know, I played a pretty fair game myself back in the day. I actually won the championship in prison. But I cannot believe how close they are to the table.
Yeah.
I'd have to back up to return and then charge the table. When I was in my prime, my dad was a great player. He taught me the game. And I played competitively when I was very young, and I kept it up throughout the years. And I cannot believe that they're right on the edge of the table with those quick unbelievable reflexes, hand-eye coordination, and the quickness of them to return with spiking the way they do is just unbelievable. I really got into, especially the women's beach volleyball.
Yeah.
Tremendous athletes. And, you know, we had that duo, I forget their names.
Missy May Trainer, I think, and
yeah, for years they dominated.
Yeah.
They were the gold medalists. I mean, you could practically not have the competition, just hand them the gold.
Yeah.
And they were fantastic. And now this new combination, the tall blonde and the little short one, are fantastic.
Yeah.
I cannot believe that short. I should know their names, and I don't know their names. But the shorter one, her defense is off the charts. They get the opposing team will spike, and she happens to be in position to dig, as they say, and make the save and set up her teammate for it. It's just incredible.
It is truly incredible.
How fantastic they are. The men, not so much. I saw the men lose, but the women are tremendous. Of course, the swimming events are very. I've always enjoyed watching the swimming. The sprints, the relays, both our men and women kind of underachieving this year. I mean, Great Britain, I watched last night, Great Britain had a fantastic relay team on freestyle. They're the defending gold medalists. I think we took the silver. And certainly Australia, too, both men and women. Are tremendous. Australia's always been great at swimming, but that has been very entertaining. The gymnastics, believe it or not, I actually got into the women's gymnastics.
Simone Biles is on another level.
Oh, and I didn't think they had a very good opening night, but they came back so strong. And every single one of them, the way they launch themselves in the air and do all of these acrobatics, I mean, it's just incredible. And landing so important. And they had just perfect landing yesterday to help them earn the gold medal. So once again, they notched gold for the United States. And I think the men did pretty well, too. They haven't determined the team finals yet, but we have a lot of the women in the individuals that will be competing for individual goals for our country. And you mentioned the basketball. The men, how can just going through the motions, they should win the gold medal. I mean, come on. But I think the big question as far as the men's basketball is if anybody, gives them a scare.
Yeah, well, I saw an interesting stat. I mean, and it kind of makes sense, right? Because I mean, look at the modern day NBA, right? There's so many dominant European players now. The Dream Team, I believe, throughout their Olympic gold medal run, I believe they faced like 8 NBA players on their route to, on other teams, of course, on the route to gold medal. And now for this team, for gold medal, they're going to be like facing, I think, like 60 plus NBA players. So it is a little bit harder now, I think, but it shows a shift in the game. Like you have people like Luka, you have people like who we just played, Jokic. You have Shai playing for Canada. I think it's definitely a little bit more hard now, but in no way, shape, or form, Giannis, exactly, no way, shape, or form should they not get gold.
I guess Embiid is taking some heat from the French because he could have played.
They were
for
every
France.
time he touched the ball, they were booing him.
But to me, it's a foregone conclusion that the U.S. should just easily. So the big story will be if they're challenged, let alone if they're upset, and even lose one game.
Yeah,
they can win the gold by losing just one game, but I still think that would be a disappointment. Women too, for that matter. They should coast to the gold medal, Ryan.
Yeah, I think they're like something absurd, like 77-0 in the last however many Olympics.
Right.
I mean, they're unbelievable.
Right. So the medal count has, going into today's competition, Japan with the most gold medals.
Really?
With 7. 2 silver, 4 bronze for 13. China is next. This is going into today's competition over there in Paris. China with 6 gold medals, 6 silver, and 2 bronze for 14. Australia is tied with China going into today with 6 gold, 4 silver, and 1 bronze for 11. The host country, France. The host country always seems to do well. France has 5 gold medals. That one swimmer's unbelievable. 9 silver, 4 bronze for a total of 18. South Korea has 5 golds, 3 silver, 3 bronze for 11. Then comes the USA with 4 gold, only 4 gold, 11 silver, 11 bronze for a total of 26. So we've got the most total medals, but they rank the teams by gold medals first. Then comes Great Britain. A couple of those, of course, is swimming with that relay team. 4 gold, 5 silver, and 3 bronze for 12. And then Italy with 3 gold, 4 silver, and 4 bronze for a total of 11. So there you have it. And, of course, the track and field hasn't even begun. When do they start the golf?
I want to say today, Bruce.
Really?
I can double check that, but I know it's coming up.
Yeah. I remember when they initiated the golf. What was it? Was it 4 years ago that they initiated it in Tokyo? And I didn't think I'd be into it like I am the majors.
It looks like tomorrow. Starts tomorrow.
It starts tomorrow?
Round 1, 3 a.m.
I didn't think I'd be into it when they first inserted golf as an Olympic event, but I really did get into it very much so, very, very much so. And there's a lot of national pride. We have 4 Americans on the team. Who is it? Shoffley, DeChambeau's on the team.
Scheffler and Clark.
And Wyndham Clark. Pretty formidable lineup there. So, and you've got players from all over the world. Obviously, McIlroy will be representing Ireland. I'm sure Shane Lowry is on that team too. So that'll be interesting to watch. And I'm curious about the course. I can't recall France being known for golf courses. They're known for skiing, for God's sakes, but I can't recall them being known for golf courses. But we shall see as the golf competition, as Ryan says, will begin tomorrow. So if I caught you by surprise, there it is. I caught myself by surprise, to tell you the truth, that I'm into the Olympics as much as I am, considering what I said in anticipation going in to the Olympics last week when I was on the air with you here with Bonus Time with Drennan here on the Big Play Sports Network. When we return, it'll be Mark Lawrence. We're going to preview the college football season as the Playbook, the latest edition of the 2024 Playbook, is out. Mark Lawrence next here on the Big Play Sports Network. Now here is the risk that Brown had to take with Great to have you back with us. Bonus Time with Drennan here on the Big Play Sports Network. And it's that time of the year again. I am delighted to welcome my dear old friend, Mark Lawrence, the editor-publisher of the Playbook. The new 2024 edition of the Playbook is out, playbooksports.com. It is an encyclopedia. Everything you need in reference to statistics and tidbits and betting trends is in the Playbook. And indeed, that's for college football and the pros. Mark, how you doing, bud?
Well, where does the time go, Bruce? It seems like the older we get, the faster it flies by. I can tell you that much.
And I'm happy, too, because it is making us fast approaching the football season. And today, I want to cover the college. And then next week, Mark will join us again, and we'll dive into the pros. The Browns will be opening up with their first exhibition game against the Green Bay Packers. So let's concentrate on college today. And Mark has published, as I mentioned, in the Playbook, the newest edition of the Playbook, his top 25, and you didn't have any hesitation. You went with Georgia #1. Tell us why.
Well, we all know about the big chip they're going to be playing with this year, Bruce, after they were shunned by the committee last year. And I mean, they were shunned. The team did nothing wrong last year other than lose in the SEC championship game to Alabama, and they were nipped. And they were left home after having been in the top spot 2 years running. I think they're coming with everything they've got this football season here. Bottom line here is they're basically a good team, and I love this hire of Kalen DeBoer, their head coach, or Kirby Smart, I should say, their head coach. He's recruited as well as anybody. He out-recruited Nick Saban in Alabama, and I think he's out-recruiting Kalen DeBoer as I'm speaking to you right now at Alabama as well. So they're not taking a seat backwards anybody to any coach or any team inside that conference. I think Georgia cruises this year, Bruce.
Yeah, and you touched on something that I yelled about last year too. You and I discussed it, and that is they were snubbed by the committee and being in the Final Four. Now, everybody, was crying. All these Seminole faithful for Florida State were crying, my goodness, we were undefeated, but they lost their quarterback, as we know, and it was the right decision. But, they always said, Bill Hancock, I've interviewed him several times throughout the years, and when it was just a two-team playoff, even going back to the coalition, let alone the championship committee, the criteria, he said, was always to pick the best two teams or the best four teams. How in heaven's name can anybody dispute that Georgia wasn't one of the top four teams in the country last year, Mark?
It's one of the mind-boggling questions of all time, Bruce. I just don't get it. I didn't get it then, and I don't get it now. And I'm sure you can rest assured it's been locker room material in Athens ever since. Yeah,
and of course this year we won't have that problem because the field has been expanded to 12. Before we proceed, what do you think of that?
I know you're a purist and you didn't like the expansion, but I do. It allows the kids from smaller schools an opportunity, a chance to play for something. And it also gives us a little bit more speculation about the teams that just missed the cut last year. We'll find out whether or not they should have been in the top four or not when they play in this 12-team tournament. So I think it's going to be exciting for all the fans, everybody there that way. I'm really looking forward to it.
My concern, and let me bounce this off of you, I use Michigan and Ohio State as the perfect example. An incredibly intense rivalry. So let's say this year that both Michigan and Ohio State, when they meet, are undefeated, or one team's undefeated and the other team's got one loss, or they both have one loss, whatever the matchup is. Now, the rivalry is the rivalry and it'll be intense, but how can it possibly be as intense, Mark, because the loser's going to get in?
Well, the loser is going to get in, just not at a premium slot, Bruce. He'll be slotted down amongst the other also-rans or the other teams that were just barely got into the tournament. So, there is importance, there's relevance there to win this and be one of the top four seeded teams. And generally, the winner of an Ohio State football game is one of the top four seeded teams when it comes to be college football playoff time.
Before I move to Ohio State, who's your second choice? Georgia, in their schedule, I went through the playbook to look at this. They play against Clemson at the beginning of the season. They get them at home, or maybe that's a neutral site to start the season. Then at Alabama, they have to play Bama during the regular season, at Bama, and at Texas.
Yeah, rather salty to say the least, Bruce. And that Ryan Day was on the hot seat during the offseason after he squelched away a golden opportunity to be that team to win the Big Ten championship and the number one seed in the playoff. And he didn't do either. So he went out and he really overhauled this football team with coaches, with transfer portal recruits. I personally feel he is one of the coaches that is truly on the hot seat. You might scoff at that and say, well, that's Ryan Day. Look at his record, and he's won all these games. But the bottom line here, Bruce, is they're paying this guy a lot of money, and they want results, and they haven't got the results the past few years, especially against Michigan.
But you know what? Let's say, just for kicks and giggles, let's say the Buckeyes are undefeated or have one loss, and they lose again to Michigan, but get into the playoff and get to the championship game, let alone win it or even not win it.
Well, then I think that's the pass he gets. Then the fact of the matter, you cannot fire a coach that makes it to a championship game. If you do, I think the athletic director or the president of the university needs to be fired first. That won't happen here. But the Ohio State's a kind of a football team, Bruce, that could lose to Michigan, squeak into the playoffs here, maybe a number 10 seed or something like that, and make it to the championship game. They're that talented. And if they do that, they'll be playing with a lot more motivation at that point of the season.
Yeah, they went out with a portal and got a couple of quarterbacks, too. So they're going to be loaded at that position, and they'll have a choice to make become the start of the season. They do have Penn State on the road. They get Michigan at home, but they've got an interesting game at Oregon.
That will be maybe arguably if the Ohio State-Michigan game isn't the Big Ten game of the year, that game should well be, because everybody has Oregon slotted as the number 2 team in the Big Ten Conference just behind the Buckeyes, and rightfully so. I mean, this football team has really done nothing wrong. Dan Lanning's done a terrific job in the short 2 years that he's been with this football program. You can't refute his record. He's been there. He's won 22 games in 2 years. and they're loaded again this year. They hit the transfer portal real hard again, brought in another outstanding quarterback, the kid from Oklahoma. So it's going to be a big, huge battle. That game on the 12th of October at Oregon is going to be Ohio State's biggest test of the year.
Yeah, and you've got Oregon as the number 3 team in the Playbook top
Yes.
25. Oregon, it does get Ohio State at home. They have to play in Ann Arbor, though, at Michigan. They also have to play in Madison against Wisconsin. I don't know how good Wisconsin's going to be this year, but Madison's never an easy place to win, no matter who it is. And then they conclude their regular season, I believe, at home against Washington. You don't have Washington ranked that high. Why?
No, well, first of all, Bruce, they went all in last year and they didn't make it. And I think they're going to end up being a much lesser football team than they've been in the past. They lose their head coach, Kalen DeBoer, as I spoke about. That's a huge loss. They lose their quarterback, their best running back, their best wide receiver. This team's only got 5 returning starters coming back in total. And now they're going to join the Big Ten and have to travel cross country and make all these trips over to the Big Ten sites. When they do just that, I think this football team is in trouble. And I think they'll win 7 or 8 games at most this year.
You mentioned DeBoer, who's now at Alabama, taking over for Nick Saban. Did I hear correctly when Saban announced that he was retiring, that a lot of the Bama kids decided to enter the portal?
Well, they did because, they were brought into Alabama by Nick Saban. So they feel like, the head leader has left them, and they could probably position themselves better on another team and be a starter and a star, especially these kids that are 2 and 3 deep on the Alabama program that were recruited as 4 or even 5-star players. So they're the ones that left, but DeBoer did a great job hitting the portal real hard and bringing some good quality caliber football players in here. So I don't think he's going to lose a whole lot here at Alabama. In fact, I think they're going to be a real sleeper team this year. When you talk about what teams would you consider to be a sleeper team in college football, and if I told you Alabama, you'd say, come on, get serious. But it's Alabama minus Nick Saban, and not as much as expected from this football team this year. I still think that they're going to be in the SEC championship game.
And Alabama, their schedule includes a game at Madison against Wisconsin. That's early on. They get Georgia. They play Georgia this year in the regular season. They're at Tennessee. They're at LSU. They're at Oklahoma, and they conclude against their traditional rival, Auburn. They've got a brutal schedule. At Oklahoma, you don't have Oklahoma ranked in the top 13. Why?
Well, what I see here, Bruce, is the new kids in the block coming into a conference. The old stodgy teams from the SEC are not going to welcome these new kids in the block, per se, if you will. And I think those teams are going to be targeted, Texas and Oklahoma, this year inside the Southeast Conference. So when they play, they're going to have to bring their A games because the other teams are going to be doing just that. And I think they'll end up paying a price, Oklahoma being one of those teams.
However, you do have the Longhorns of Texas ranked number 5 in the Playbook. They, of course, had a great season a year ago. They do have games at Michigan, home, the neutral site in the Cotton Bowl against Oklahoma, their traditional Red River rivalry. They play Georgia this year.
Yep.
They get them at home. They have to play the Florida Gators at home, and then they're at Texas A&M, their traditional rivalry. That's a brutal schedule too, Mark.
No question about it. And I'm almost contradicting what I just said about Oklahoma and saying there's an exception to Texas. And I'm not saying it's an exception. I'm just saying Texas is deeply, deeply talented. They have no back-to-back road games to be found anywhere on their schedule this year. And if you take a look at the returning production rankings, they rank 36th best in the country in overall total returning production due to the Texas Longhorns. But it's my feeling here that I think Texas is going to end up tripping up in their last game of the season at Texas A&M. That game is going to be huge for the Aggies, with that rivalry being restored again here this year. And I think Texas A&M is going to foil Texas, if you will, foil their chances to be a number 1 or 2 seed in the playoff.
Mark in the Playbook has the LSU Tigers ranked number 6 in the country. They are one of 5 teams that Mark has ranked from the SEC in the top 13. Tell us about them.
Well, this is really all about the head coach there, Bruce. You might not like Brian Kelly, but all the guy does is win football games. Since he's been there, he's won 21 games in 2 years, or 20 games in 2 years. I think he's got enough talent here this year as well. Again, he's bringing a team that ranks, I think, number 80 in overall returning production. So it's sort of midstream for the program there that way. But if you look at his schedule, Bruce, on the road, I think every game is almost winnable for this football program here. They're going to go to South Carolina. They're going to go to Arkansas. They're going to go to A&M, and they're going to go to Florida. If they lose any of those football games, it will be a huge upset. And that being the case, this football team could be favored in every game they play this year because they're going to host Oklahoma, where they'll be favored. They're going to host Alabama, where they'll likely be favored. There's nobody else on their schedule here. So if no other reason, this team is going to be favored most likely in every game they play.
Based on what you just said, you didn't mention Southern Cal. They get Southern Cal at home. Not much respect for Southern Cal this year?
Well, I think there'll be more this year than there's been in the past. Number one, they're losing Caleb Williams, which is a big, huge hole. They do recruit as well as anybody in the country. But I'm not a big Lincoln Riley fan. He just doesn't know the meaning of the word defense. He went out and he hired a new defensive coordinator here, and hopefully that will spur this team in the right direction. But when you're talking playoffs, you're talking top 4 or 5 teams. Almost every time, every one of those teams brings a defense to the table, and we haven't seen it from Southern Cal.
Now, next you've got Ole Miss. The Rebels are number 7 in the country. They've got games at LSU, home to Oklahoma, home to Georgia, and at Florida. That's pretty brutal, too. Although, correct me if I'm wrong, the SEC is no longer going to be divisionally broken up like they have in the past with the East and the West?
No more divisions in the SEC. It's all just where you finish is where you're going to be rewarded. And this Ole Miss team is a team you have to watch, Bruce, this year. Lane Kiffin, he goes out and he makes shambles of the transfer portal. He brings in the best players in the country. He does it year in and year out. I don't know how much money he spends for these kids, but he's spending a boatload. And it's a football team that is going to be really, really tough. I think anybody looks past Ole Miss in any way, shape, or form this football season will make a huge mistake. And I wouldn't be at all surprised to see Ole Miss possibly being in the Southeast Conference Championship game this year.
Interesting that they don't have Alabama on their schedule,
Yes.
which was always a very tough obstacle for them. Number 8, Mark has the Michigan Wolverines ranked number 8. They get Texas at home. They get Southern Cal at home. They travel to Washington. Now, Mark has already said USC and Washington, he doesn't anticipate to be as strong as they possibly could be, or certainly in years past. And then, of course, they conclude at Ohio State. Talk about the Wolverines. And Harbaugh's gone.
Harbaugh's gone, but the talent's still there, Bruce. The players that he recruited are largely there. I mean, they lost some to the transfer portal. Some even went with him, or they didn't go with him. They would have graduated and played with him in the NFL. But a lot of them left when he left as well. I think it's going to be a real tough job for Sherrone Moore to inherit and fill those shoes of Jim Harbaugh here. He was an assistant coach who stepped up and delivered really, really well. Kudos to him. Pat on the back, a great job. But this football team went 15-0 last year, Bruce. They're going to be the number 1 team on every team's schedule when they play this year. What's going to benefit them the most is they're going to open up, if you take a look, with 5 straight consecutive home games in a row. And one is against Texas, which they could possibly drop. Another's against Southern Cal, which they could possibly stumble their toe. If they win just 3 of those first 5 home football games, this football team is going to be in a boatload of trouble here, especially when it gets down to the last game of the season when they visit the Horseshoe in Columbus.
Number 9, Mark has Florida State, and he has Clemson, number 13. Now, these are 2 ACC teams. Florida State plays Clemson this year, obviously. At Miami, I know that Mark has respect for Miami of Florida. They're at Notre Dame. And then against Florida. Clemson, on the other hand, opens up against Georgia. And then the other really tough game on their schedule is Florida State. So talk about both of those teams representing the ACC.
Well, I think there's going to be a letdown of sorts for Florida State this year. They came so close. They feel that they were dissed by the committee last year. That should prove to be motivation for the team, but they don't bring a whole lot back as far as returning starters goes, Bruce. It's only 10 starters coming back for this football program here. And because they're defending champion, they're going to be number 1 on the hit list of all the ACC games they play this year. I think Clemson is going to step up and deliver the goods finally this year. Dabo Swinney is stuck by his guns. He hasn't gone out and raided the transfer portal, isn't doing any of that stuff. He's just flat out recruiting football players here. He's making a statement, and I think it'll pay off for him in spades this particular football year. Look at the job that he's done recruiting football players, Bruce. In our magazine here, the last 4 years they ranked 3rd, 5th, 10th, and 11th in overall recruiting. Clemson does. They have a lot of talent on this football team, and I think they'll be the team to beat in the ACC.
Number 10 are the Nittany Lions of Penn State out of the Big Ten. They have a game at Southern Cal in Los Angeles, and they also will host Ohio State. That'll probably be a night game with a whiteout. But I know you're not a big Franklin fan. Tell us about the Nittany Lions.
Well, it's all going to be about the kid from Medina, the quarterback, Allar.
Allar, yeah.
Allar, yeah. If he steps up, Bruce, and delivers like he should, I mean, this kid's a 5-star quarterback recruit. He just didn't have the look of a 5-star quarterback playing last year. He looked rather lost last year, but he has the physical skills. And if he steps up and delivers, they could be in the mix in the Big Ten Conference. It's all going to come down to Allar. And the other side of the coin here is I don't ever want to put any of my money on Penn State when it's a big football game and they need to win the contest here. I think Franklin finds ways to lose more games than he wins. Respected, yes, but on the top of my ticket, no.
The Fighting Irish of Notre Dame are ranked number 11, according to Mark. They've got a game at A&M. They host Florida State, as I mentioned, and they travel to Southern Cal, one of their traditional rivals. How do you see the Irish this year?
Always going to be competitive, Bruce. It's it's what they do in South Bend. They just bring real good football players into the program here, and it's beginning to look more and more like the hire of Marcus Freeman ends up being a really good hire. He's won 19 games in 2 seasons here, doing a nice job recruiting players as well. And their schedule, they're going to open up at A&M, and I'm going to say this. I think A&M, as I told you earlier, I think is going to be the surprise team in college football this year, and Notre Dame could well lose that football game. If they do trip up and lose in College Station here, they've got a long hill to climb up to get there. Not a real difficult schedule to do it with, but they have to win every game going out there. They have Florida State at home, and they'll end up at Southern Cal. So watch out for the A&M game, the first game of the season for Notre Dame. I think there's an upset in the making.
And then the 5th SEC team ranked in the top 12 by Mark is the Tennessee Volunteers. They have to play at Oklahoma, home to Florida, home to Alabama, and at Georgia. That's a brutal schedule.
Yeah, they have a brutal schedule, Bruce. The fact of the matter is most teams inside the Southeast Conference have brutal schedules because they go up against each other and they just beat the snot out of each other. And it makes it real difficult for these teams to endure and win through. The teams that do are the ones that out-recruited everybody else with those 4- and 5-star recruits, a la the Georgia Bulldogs. But I don't think Tennessee's in that level here yet. I know they've had some good players. A lot's been expected of them, but they've fallen short, it seems like, each and every year. And I think they'll fall short again this year.
You mentioned A&M as a possible sleepers. Any others like Miami of Florida or anybody else?
Well, Miami of Florida, Bruce, there's a lot to like about this football team here. Cam Ward is an outstanding transfer quarterback from the portal. And he could end up being the best player in the ACC if he plays to the level that he's played at before. My main concern about Miami of Florida is Mario Cristobal. He's not a very good head coach, Bruce. He can out-recruit everybody, but he doesn't do the X's and O's real well on the sidelines here. And you take a look at his schedule here. He's going to open up at Florida. That's not a gimme at all for that football team. Florida's down this year, but it's still Florida. If he gets past that game, they could really roll, Miami can, and they could be undefeated, possibly going into the game against Syracuse. If they are, they're going to be in the top 10 here, obviously, and in the running in the college football playoffs. So they're going to be sneaky good. It's just that they can't let Mario Cristobal get in the way.
You didn't have... Obviously, everybody's talking about the Big Ten and the SEC with of course, the insertion of these powerhouses like Texas and Oklahoma going to the SEC, Southern Cal, UCLA, Washington, Oregon going to the Big Ten. You don't have anybody from the Big 12. That's a revamped conference as well, with additions. Is there anybody we should look for that could possibly make that playoff top 12 out of that conference?
Out of the Big 12? Well, they're going to have to really run the table. The Utah Utes look to be the most probable, Bruce, because they're well coached. They have a lot of talent. The football team does, and I think they'll be battling Kansas State or Iowa State in the finals. All three good, rock solid football teams, but none of them at the very top level in the world of college football here today. So I got to make it Utah, Kansas State, and Iowa State inside the Big 12. And, we're going to find some other teams that could be disappointing here. TCU might bounce back as well this year, but make it Utah, Kansas State, and Iowa State.
What do you see out of Colorado with Deion?
I got a feeling this might be his last year there, Bruce. He's been publicity for them, and I guess any publicity, whether it's good or bad, is still publicity for a coach like that. But the question remains: can this guy coach? He can recruit, yes. His kids are there, yes, but his kids aren't going to be there at his side forever. And I just don't know what's going to happen to him. I think he's to end up being a coach in the National Football League sooner than later.
Last question for you, Mark. Outside of injuries, which certainly is the major point here, how important is it for these teams to get that first round bye by being one of the top 4?
Huge, Bruce. Remember, you can equate it to the National Football League playoffs, where the top seeds get the bye, and that's what they play for all season long, because it gives them a blow, an extra time to get ready, let the bruises heal up a little bit. And I think it'll work the same way for these teams in college football this year. So you absolutely want to be one of those top 4 teams, and that's what you'll be watching, Bruce, gauging which of these teams are viable to be a number 1, 2, or 3, 4 seed, because that's what they're playing for. That's a carrot all into itself.
Well, as we enter the month of August, I wanted to get Mark Lawrence on to pick his brain about college football, and his top 25 is out in the Playbook, the 2024 publication. How do the fans get the Playbook, Mark?
Real easy, Bruce. Just log on to playbooksports.com. You can download that, or our newsletter. The magazines are going off the shelf real fast. Newsletter subscriptions are really peaking. And if you can't do that, you can look at all the Barnes & Nobles and Books A Million stores. They're on sale there as well.
All right, Mark Lawrence, editor-publisher of the Playbook, playbooksports.com. Check it out. Next week, Mark will be joining us. We'll preview the NFL and concentrate on our Cleveland Browns. What an important upcoming season for Cleveland, no question about it. Mark, you have a great week. Talk to you then.
And I'll tell you this, Bruce, next week when I join you, I'll give you some news about the Cleveland Browns that will make your jaw drop, I promise. Okay?
You've done that several times throughout the decades, my friend.
Yes, I have. And I'll do it again.
Mark Lawrence, the one and only. We'll be back in a minute with the Ask Bruce segment. Next, on Bonus Time with Drennan, here on the Big Play Sports Network. Now, here is the risk that the Browns had to take with Back with you here, Bonus Time with Drennan here on the Big Play Sports Network. By the way, give me the 2-shot with you included here, Ryan.
Yeah, what's up?
I meant to mention this earlier. I'm looking at my monitor. That's not the Cincinnati Reds or the Cincinnati Bengals.
No.
That's the.
I would never wear that.
That's
I would
the
never wear that. The one good thing to come out of Cincinnati is the Bearcats. I will admit. Only good thing.
That's Ryan's alma mater. Yes. I didn't hear Mark Lawrence talk about their football team this year, Ryan. What's going on?
Yeah, because they're probably not worth his breath. Because the problem is, we were absolutely phenomenal the one year we went to the college football playoff. We had Desmond Ridder, an NFL quarterback, which is debatable. But we had Luke Fickell, who was amazing at recruiting. He was getting local kids from Ohio.
Wisconsin.
Yes, and then he went to Wisconsin, and it kind of just took our plans, our momentum.
Who took
and
over there?
Scott Satterfield. He came from Louisville, and in my opinion, he's a garbage coach. He doesn't recruit. I don't think he recruits.
Tell us how you really feel.
I don't think he recruits all that well either, and I think he's way worse at the X's and O's and the game management than Luke Fickell is. I think it was a bad hire. I thought it was a bad hire when they did it, but they went and did it anyway, and now our program is pretty much down in the dumps. And it sucks because once Fickell left, it came at the time when we went to the Big 12, and now that is huge, right? You were playing in the American Athletic Conference. You were, for the last 5 years, really the team to beat in that conference. Now you go to the Big 12, which isn't even like you talk about. It's not an SEC or a Big 10. We barely win any games last year, and now all momentum's gone, and I don't know anybody that really wants to play for the Bearcats. It's a sad state for them right now. Basketball, Bruce, I'll tell you next year, Wes Miller's finally coming around. He's a damn good recruiter. They'll be a top 25 preseason team, and they're going to make the tournament for the first time in, I think, 4 years, and I got a lot of faith in basketball.
Interesting. Of course, I always have contended that they could have won 2 or 3 national championships when my buddy Bob Huggins was there. He had 4 years where he legitimately, he feels only 2 of those years he legitimately had a shot and came up shy. But certainly going back to the Oscar Robertson days, right after that, they did win a couple of national championships over Ohio State, as a matter of fact, and then lost one to Loyola of Chicago. Any observations on what Mark said about these college teams?
I mean, I agreed with a lot of his rankings. I think Georgia still is number one. And then Ohio State, I think, is the class of the Big Ten. A lot of people, it'll be interesting because as talented and as hard as they hit the transfer portal, Ohio State did. A lot of people low-key think Oregon is could be the Big Ten champion.
Wouldn't that be something they come into the Big Ten for the first year and they win it?
It could happen. I mean, outside of Penn State, no. I'm sorry, they're under James Franklin. They're not doing it. Michigan, obviously, not full rebuild, but you know what I mean.
I don't see them without Harbaugh.
It's going to be Ohio State or Oregon, and Dan Lanning's a damn good coach too. But like I said, I mean, it'll be one of those two. But I still think Ohio State has a little too much more talent, and I think Ryan Day's a very good coach as well. Even though some people, they have different mixed opinions about that. But I think they let the fact he lost to Michigan over these last couple of years really cloud their judgment.
He didn't show much respect for Southern Cal or Washington.
Yes, he did not. Which I mean, he made a good point, right? Washington, you're losing Michael Penix, you're losing Rome Odunze, right? Then you go to USC, you're losing Caleb Williams, which was really the only reason your team was worth a damn last year.
But he said at Oregon, Nix is going to be replaced. They did a good job replacing him.
Yeah, they got Dylan Gabriel, the transfer from Oklahoma. He was in the Heisman running for a little while there. He'll definitely be a good quarterback. And now, Oregon's had good quarterbacks for the last 5 years, right? Herbert, Bo Nix, now Dylan Gabriel. So, I mean, they'll always be in the mix. And anytime Dan Lanning's there, like he said, all he does is win the last 2 years, 22 games. So
he's high on A&M.
Yeah, I don't know much about A&M, but
yeah,
I guess
he likes that coach. He also was high on Clemson.
Yeah, which is interesting, right? Because you just saw Saban retire because of the NIL. Dabo Swinney kind of he's indifferent, not even indifferent. I think he hates NIL, maybe not as much as Saban, but he said he's not hitting the transfer portal, hitting NIL. He's a still true recruiter, and he's been very verbal about how much he dislikes NIL.
Right.
So we'll see if his old coaching ways can overcome it, or if he'll just get left behind in the world of NIL.
It's the Ask Bruce segment. Fire away.
Alrighty, first one. Hey, Bruce, over the years, do you think that Cleveland fans tend to be overly critical of the Guardians' acquisitions or front office moves, whereas the Browns seem to get a pass with their unconditional support?
No question about it. Very astute question just asked, and I totally agree. I've always said, and particularly pertaining to the Browns of today, because of the Watson contract. You've heard me say the clock is ticking. It's a 5-year contract. If they don't make it to the Super Bowl within the 5 years, I think it'll set the franchise back several years, at least 5 in my opinion. But the Browns only have to get to the Super Bowl. In my opinion, if the Browns get to the Super Bowl and lose, it'll still be a euphoric accomplishment, and the fans will be celebrating and happy as could be. If the Guardians get to the World Series this year and lose it, the criticism will be coming out of the cracks. It will be overwhelmingly, it'll never change until they spend money, until they do this, until they do that. They do not get a pass, even though the fans do not understand the incredible difference of the economics of baseball as opposed to the NFL. As a mid-level market, what the Indians, now Guardians, are accomplishing, being as competitive and a playoff entry as they have been, is amazing to me. They're in the same boat with Kansas City and Milwaukee and some of these other franchises like Milwaukee that has never been to the World Series except for 1 year. That was 1982 when they lost to the St. Louis Cardinals in 7 years when Whitey Herzog was the manager of the Redbirds. But swallow this. Here's the greatest example of the economic difference between baseball and the NFL. And I'm not talking about the salary cap, which is a large, huge, and you're never going to have a salary cap in baseball because the large markets will never allow it. But here's another equally glaring fact about the difference between baseball and the NFL. The Green Bay Packers get as much money from the league in shared revenue as the New York Giants. The same amount. You know what the population of Green Bay, Wisconsin is? You sneeze going 70 miles an hour and you're through the town. Okay? So the fans don't realize that. They just, no matter how many, I've been preaching this for decades and they just don't grasp it. But I'm not all fans. I don't want to stereotype all fans. As obviously the individual that asked that question knows. because of the way he asked the question. But no, anything short of a World Series and the criticism will erupt like a volcano for the Guardians. But the Browns don't have to win the Super Bowl. They just have to get there. And even if they don't get there, for God's sakes, they were, 1-31? And still everybody's talking Browns. Oh, I think the future's bright. Oh, yeah, right. We'll see. I'm very high on the Browns this year. I really am. I think they are loaded, and they have got a great chance to get to the Super Bowl this season. Everybody's going to have injuries, but I think the Browns depth chart is the strongest it's been in years. The skill position players on offense, the defense we know with Schwartz has been off the charts tremendous. So I'm very high on the Browns, but the competition in this division and the conference, you still have to deal with Kansas City, Buffalo, now Miami. It's a brutal conference, and certainly the division, in my opinion, is the toughest in all of the NFL.
Alrighty, hey, Bruce, what team or teams do you think, quote-unquote, won the MLB trade deadline this year?
I think the Dodgers did quite well. The Yankees getting Chisholm he's a heck
Have
of
you
a
seen
ball
the
player.
tear he's on right now?
Yeah, I know. What did he have, 4 RBI right off the get-go?
I think first Yankee.
Puts the pinstripes on and bam.
I think he's the first Yankee in history to have 4 home runs in his first 2 games.
Unbelievable. And then, but the Dodgers did quite well. St. Louis did okay. Not that I anticipate that they may not even make the playoffs, but they did okay. I think we're right up there. I thought we addressed 2 glaring needs. Obviously, getting Lane Thomas, and then the 2 pitchers, Boyd and Cobb, I think are very fine additions. So we addressed 2 needs, and heck. We got to have us in Philadelphia have the best records in all of baseball.
Alrighty, hey, Bruce, I think I know the answer to this one. Actually, I do know your answer to this one because we talked about it earlier, but hey, Bruce, do you think Emmanuel Clase deserves Cy Young consideration this season?
Yeah, I think you have to put him in the mix without question. I mean, who else can match what he's doing? Willie Hernandez won the MVP for Detroit way back in 1984. He was a tremendous closer for them, great relief pitcher, won the Cy Young, and I think Clase's got a chance to do the same thing as a relief pitcher. There's been several others throughout the decades, but Clase, definitely, you can make a very, very strong case. And it's not just that he's compiling all these saves, plus 30 now, but in the fashion he's doing it, he just blows people away. And it seems from outing to outing to outing, he just gets out there with more confidence. Yesterday's game was not a save situation. And notice historically how closers, will come into a game in a non-save situation and underachieve. It's been that way forever, not just our guys. Hader of Houston this year just blew one the other day. I mean, it's not uncommon. I saw Rivera do it when he was with the Yankees with Torrey. Torrey tried to avoid putting him in those situations. Sometimes managers can't. But a Clase, it doesn't seem to matter with him.
Alrighty, lastly here, Bruce. Hey, Bruce, I know you think the AFC North is the hardest division in the NFL. What would you say is the second?
In the NFL?
Yeah.
I'm thinking NFC West, very strong. Very strong. NFC East, Philadelphia, Dallas. Not the South is the weakest, that's for sure. NFC. AFC South is nothing to brag about. AFC East is pretty competitive when Buffalo, now Miami in there. I don't see AFC West because Kansas City's just clearly above everybody else. So I guess I would say the in the NFC Central, there's another one. I guess I would have to say the NFC West because of Frisco. The Rams are competitive, obviously. That's a strong division.
All right, well, that's it for Hey Bruce.
All right. Well, we appreciate you joining us for this version of Bonus Time with Drennan here on the Big Play Sports Network. We're going to give you the results of our little get-together at MGM Northfield Park next week. We'll also have Mark Lawrence on to preview the NFL season and, of course, talk and concentrate a lot on our Cleveland Browns, so you don't want to miss the show. We'll have more updates on the Olympics, certainly the Guardians on this tear, so we look forward to having you joining us next week here on Bonus Time with Drennan. I'm Bruce Drennan on behalf of Ryan Smith. You have a wonderful week. Until then, as always, and most importantly, you remember,